Good day, everybody. Dave Walker here. I am excited to bring you another nominee for our Best SMB Awards in the category of product offering, and that is Shipstation. And I'm joined today by Todd Wilkens, who's the head of product for Shipstation. Welcome, Todd.
Hi, thanks.
Good to have you back. Why don't we just start for those who haven't seen you in your other video that you did for us for our Leaders Forum. Give us a quick 411 on you.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm the Chief Product Officer at, the company is called Octane. We actually have a number of products, Shipstation being our sort of flagship product. I can talk about that again a little bit later because the portfolio actually is meaningful for merchants. But yeah, so I'm the Chief Product Officer there. I run product management and user experience and design. My history actually is in a lot of user experience and design work historically, although my previous job to this, I was the GM for WooCommerce, which is a large e-commerce platform, in which case I was sort of running that whole business, like the mini CEO for that organization. And so, yeah, most of my life has been product and design work, a lot around user experience. Way back in the day, I have a computer science degree, so I can speak to technical people just enough. And also spent a little bit of a time as a academic sociologist, which is I think why I like to say my favorite thing is I like to make great products and services, but I really love to make great teams that make great products and services, because that's how you scale things up, is to create great cultures and great teams of getting great products out to your customers. So I think that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, no, that's terrific. And it's a great recognition of your skill, of your core skill, which is building those teams. So give us, I know you weren't there at the beginning, but can you give us a little bit of the origin story of Shipstation, how it came to be?
Yeah, sure. So Shipstation was, originally it was, I guess you'd say it was founded in, I think it was around 2011. And actually, interestingly enough, it was started by two engineering entrepreneurs, Byron Weir and Jason Hodges. And they started it, actually, it was originally not called Shipstation, it was called Octane. And it was basically a plugin for eBay for helping people do shipping for eBay merchants.
Really? Okay. I didn't know that.
And what happened is as they built that and it was very successful, it was moving along, they ended up bringing on Nathan Jones, who is our current CEO. And somewhere in the midst of that, they pivoted to be building a more general purpose multi-channel multi-carrier solution, and they rebranded themselves as Shipstation. And so that was in the early years, 2011, 12, 13. Shipstation was acquired by Stamps.com in 2014. And then since then, it's been sort of just growing and expanding. And what's happened along the way is Stamps acquired a few other products that also help in the e-commerce space. And within this last year, Stamps sort of consolidated all their e-commerce work into Octane, which is the leadership team that was ostensibly the leadership team for Shipstation, is now the sort of leadership team for this portfolio of products, which is Shipstation, which you talked about, Shipping Easy, ShipWorks, and then a product called Ship Engine, which is an API and developer product, also serving large enterprises, the custom-built solutions for logistics and fulfillment. So that was sort of the history over the last, let's say, almost 10 years. Since they started as an eBay plugin.
That's amazing. That's a great story. I had no idea that's how the started was. It was as an eBay plugin. So not that you're not a household name at this point, but I also think that there's a degree of, well, let's not presume that the audience knows exactly what it is that your products deliver, particularly the Shipstation product. So can you give us, again, a little bit of a thumbnail on what those products do for small businesses?
Yeah, and I'll focus on Shipstation because our product is nominated here. So I don't mean to give a play for the whole portfolio. They just relate to each other a bit. So Shipstation is fundamentally an e-commerce shipping and fulfillment solution. So it helps merchants who are selling things online ship and fulfill the products to their customers. That means that and it's fundamentally multi-channel, which means you can connect multiple places where you're selling. Amazon, eBay, a Shopify store, or what have you. You can connect all those, so all your orders come to one place, and then you can manage your shipping and fulfillment for those orders from one place, and we do that across multiple carriers. So not just the U.S. Postal Service, but USPS, FedEx, DHL, that sort of thing. So it's a hub for someone's business if they have an e-commerce business. Orders come in, items ship out, right? And is essentially what it is. And I'd say probably the thing that the two things that really have made Shipstation successful, and they're still very core to what we do, is we recognize that we have this phrase. It's like wherever you sell, wherever you ship, we're going to make it exceptionally efficient. That means we don't want to put limits on where you're selling, because all businesses need the flexibility to sell where their customers are, or their potential customers are. And wherever they're shipping, which means we do a lot of stuff in the US, but we are expanding globally currently. You can ship things to most places in the world right now using Shipstation, and in whatever way you need. So it's not just print your own label, put it on something, but people do things in large batches. We have gigantic volumes. People can also integrate with things like Fulfillment by Amazon, or some of the third-party logistics companies who will handle that kind of stuff for them. So the integrations are important. And then the second thing is that we've always been workflow focused, which is we don't just need to make something possible, like, hey, you can print a label and get a good rate on it. It's we work very hard to know what best practices are for companies when they start small to when they scale up, about how they handle their success and their volumes, and then also the complexity. Some workflows have a lot of complexity to them, and some of them are very simple, right? If you sell T-shirts, you take orders, you ship T-shirts. If you custom print T-shirts, you take orders, you have to get a bunch of information about them, you have to do the custom printing, and then you have to, so there are some complex workflows, and that was what we really prided ourselves in understanding that about our customers. And my experience has been that that's one of the things that really differentiates Shipstation from other things that are out there that are mostly just making it easy to, print some U.S. Postal Service labels at a discounted rate.
It strikes me that, because small businesses are at heart operators, they love operating their business, that's why they dig what you do so much, is because it makes them feel like really great operators of their, their back end, their shipping out. So since 2011, and the company has obviously grown since 2011, when you guys were sitting down and making your 2020 plans and forecasts, and you kind of saw the trajectory of what you were on, how did the trajectory change in early March when the proverbial shit hit the fan?
Yeah, sure. No, I'd say it's the two best ways to explaining it are just the sheer scale and volume, right? We were already connected in to a lot of the major marketplaces and storefronts, right? And so what we saw was that, wow, people are stuck at home, but they still need things. And so e-commerce sales just blew up, right? But what that meant is that shipments blew up. So I always my sort of rough description of this is like, most e-commerce companies look at Q4 as a very special place where most things happen, and they prepare every year for Q4, right? And when it comes to shipping, we especially care a lot about Black Friday or Cyber Monday, because that's like a major point when people buy a lot of stuff, and so right there, a bunch of stuff's gonna start shipping. Right. And so what I always like to say is, like, in March or April, basically it was Cyber Monday every Monday. Right. And so we used to spend a year making sure we prepared for that, and they were growing every year. And now it's like, so we had to prepare we had to be ready and keep working so that we could keep everything moving smoothly with great performance and robustness and reliability for something that unprecedented is a silly word to use, but really was just unprecedented. So that was the thing, just the scale. And then I'd say the other thing that was really important to us was the challenges around the coronavirus and people staying home and e-commerce growing meant that there were a bunch of small businesses who their entire business was based on face-to-face. Right. And those are very hard businesses to keep going right now. Right. And so we saw a huge influx of people trying to figure out how to move their business online or add an online component to their business. Mm-hmm. So we had a bunch of new merchants. It's a giant onslaught of new merchants, many of whom hadn't planned to be e-commerce merchants. Right. So they maybe hadn't done the research. It wasn't in their DNA. Like, it just wasn't their nature, but they needed to figure out how to make it work. And so I'd say that was one of the other things we had to get our heads around and be ready for, was we always needed to be easy to use and help people ramp in. But and I can tell you this from e-commerce too. generally speaking, if you like look at all the people who try to start an e-commerce store in a given month,
Mm-hmm.
right? A lot of them have really thought about it for a while before they started it, and they've done some research and they picked a thing, and they know they're starting it, but they're not like, I have to pay my rent at the end of this month with this new thing I'm starting, right? They usually give themselves some runway if they're starting as a side project, something. There's only a small set who have an urgency to succeed quickly and very little context.
Right.
And what we saw in March was that the
That was
proportion of those
everybody.
people, well, if not everybody, it was a much bigger proportion, which means you have to scale up the way you help those people, because before we could maybe, we could handle them by making sure we had enough phone support capacity so we could actually talk to someone and to walk them through, right? And if we have, I'm totally making up numbers here to give you examples. If we had usually 10 of those a week, we now have 100 of them a week, right? It's like order of magnitude changes, right? And so we had to change the way we were approaching things to help those new people ramp up quickly, because they did need to pay their rent at the end of the month. Right? They couldn't take 3 or 4 months to learn their way through it.
Right.
And so that was really, those two things were major changes we could not have possibly planned for, and I think have been very foundational to driving a lot of the things we've been doing in the last 6 months, 9 months.
This is a big question that you can take in any direction you want to, but how did you adjust? I mean, as this is happening, how did you and your team adjust?
Yeah, well, so I'm not gonna get into the boring parts about the technical stuff. We did a bunch of stuff in order to help ourselves to we never were in danger of our systems falling down because of the volume or anything. We had architected and built our stuff for scale regardless, because we had ambitions for being large. We already had huge volumes, but but there was a number of things we did there because we wanted to make sure that we were we fast forwarded a few projects, I should say, that we had around robustness and performance. I'd say the bulk of what we actually have spent our time on is dealing with new customers, new people who are new to e-commerce, new to shipping and fulfillment. And so our first, the first line of defense, the first place where people would interact with us was actually with support. So our help documents and our conversation with our support organization. So because that can be changed relatively quickly, we can ramp that up relatively quickly. So our first goal was do we have enough people to answer the phones and the emails and to give people help when they need it? Do we have enough, either our documents and the things that we have to help people, ramp up on, like, how do I do this e-commerce shipping thing? Or what does it mean to use these particular, U.S. Postal Service versus UPS versus whatever? What do these things mean? International shipping, how do I do that? What's what are customs forms, right? Like that kind of stuff. We wanted to make sure we were really, so we started ramping that stuff up. We ramped up our support staff because we saw giant volumes. The next thing we started doing was looking at creating a few guides for people who were just getting started. Things we'd been meaning to do already, but because it became much more important for these people. So we've got a few PDFs that we've launched that are just sort of making sense of what's going on, giving people a sense of what's happening with e-commerce generally, because these people who had a mom and pop corner store or a couple of or franchise store with a couple of brick and mortar spots are now coming online, and the thing they don't realize is that the second they're coming online, they're sort of competing with Amazon. Right. And that's a really different game. It's like it's like taking a middle school baseball player and dropping him in a major league game, right? And saying, good luck, right?
Great analogy.
Right. So we pride ourselves in trying to make that actually possible, right? For people to actually compete in that space. Part of it we try to take care of for them, and part of it is to try to help them ramp up as quickly as they can to understand what they need to do in order to compete. So support to learning and docs, which we're continuing still some threads on learning. And then we started looking at things around the product experience itself. And because it takes a while to build stuff in products. So like I should say, we start thinking about it immediately, but it takes a while to build it. So it can't roll out as fast as the support and docs work could. And for that, I'd say we focused on a few major things. One is that all of these new users, in the sense of new users who are really new to e-commerce, and who have a very strong have an urgency to figuring out how to succeed very quickly, helped us to step back and take a fresh look at our whole product. It's been very successful and working really well. But at a certain point, you kind of, you can get a little, you lose a little perspective on it, right? You start to get a little too in the weeds of it. So we actually step back, and one of the things we've been doing over the last few months is actually just, let's call it like a just general refresh of the whole user experience. We just started realizing, like, oh, there's a bunch of these little things that someone could figure out, but we could make it so much easier for someone the first time that, this piece of terminology or this way that we've organized this piece of the workflow, we could, given what we've learned, we could make that so much better, so much easier for someone who doesn't have a lot of context here. And so that was actually, we've been rolling out, like, I can't even tell you how many. They're all little and big changes to our user experience, because we know that that's actually what matters the most, that workflow and user experience. So there's a lot of that work. And then I'd say this very generally, it's this: how do you help someone ramp up to act like a major league baseball player when all they've been doing is little league?
Right.
And it's sort of this question of, like, well, you have to actually analyze that and say, well, what are the things that you can do for them that they really don't have to think about, and what are the things that you can't, right? And so for us, it's things like, well, I can't make their business for them. Like, I can't choose the products that they're going to sell. I can't do their marketing for them. I can't do their customer engagement for them. But I can do things like make sure that they don't have to worry about creating accounts with all these different carriers. So they have a set of different options for how they want to send something to someone. So we've been working really hard to make it so that when someone signs up for Shipstation, they're automatically signed up for a bunch of carriers, and they have access to a bunch of services at really good rates. Before we had some of that, but we doubled down on it a lot, because we realized that's a huge barrier for people. Then they don't even have to think about it. They don't need to think about how an account works. They don't have to worry about any of that stuff. We'll take care of all that for them. We focused a lot on how when you're a small business with all your inventory kind of like in your house or in your store or in your, you're in a physical location. It turns out that we all live in the physical world in a physical location that's somewhere.
Amazing.
And that means there's geographic distance between where you happen to be and where your customer is. And sometimes it's a small distance, and sometimes a long one. And so realizing that most small businesses aren't set up to initially understand the logistics of having inventory kept in different places so that they can do 2-day delivery to almost anybody. Like, there are a bunch of people who are experts in that. Small businesses who were forced in line because of COVID are not experts in that. And so we've been putting a lot of time into offering, ways to help people understand how to do that, like connecting them in with third-party fulfillment organizations, helping them understand how they can, how and when it makes sense to be able to use fulfillment by Amazon. Because if a lot of their sales are coming through Amazon, which is true, sometimes if people are competing, but it's often like co-opetition. Like, my Shopify store is competing with Amazon, but I also sell things on Amazon, right? Is what most businesses are. But we can help them meet certain needs by leveraging Amazon's back-end fulfillment, but still be taking orders from lots of different places. We focus a lot on creating those integrations and making them easy to use so that they don't have to learn the logistics space. We can just start to say, what is your goal? Oh, you want to offer free shipping to everybody? Here's the way you can do it. You want to be able to offer two-day shipping on almost everything in this part of your catalog? Great. Here's a sense of how we can integrate with the right places and help you have the partners that you really need in order to operate on that level. Most just beginning e-commerce merchants aren't quite ready for that. So they don't jump right into it, from the, like, I never had an online store to I'm trying to store inventory in 3 different warehouses across the country. They don't usually make that jump like that. But we don't want to make it something where they have to wait years before they can do that if their business is actually succeeding. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So those are we've been focusing a lot on that. Like, as you could tell, like, there's a bunch of product features, like some of which I could talk about right now, some of which we will announce shortly because we've been working on them. But it's really been driven fundamentally by this empathy and understanding with these merchants who are coming on. That's always been a core of our company. And it's why workflow is something we pay a lot of attention to. It's, because workflow is what makes things happen. Businesses often live and die by small businesses, by how efficient they can be in what they're doing.
Let me throw you a softball to the baseball metaphor.
Sure.
You described a focus on first on documentation, then on training, then on improvement of features that really effectively responded to customer experience, then now developing proficiency and doing so in a way in which, frankly, small businesses can master it. Is all that part of the product in your mind?
Yeah, we debate this internally a lot, right? So you're going to get my perspective, and I'm going to be honest that if you were to ask, so if Nathan, our CEO, was on here, or someone else was, one of our COO, Brian, was on, they might say something slightly different, and so I'm going to just be honest with that. But from my perspective, what I like to instill in my product managers and all the product leads is that the whole experience is the product, right?
Mm-hmm.
And especially in this case, I think you can make a case for the digital parts of it, right? So I think the online help experience is definitely part of the product. This is not a conversation about who owns that, what team owns it within an organization, because I've seen different things work in different places.
Mm-hmm.
But if the people who are working on our core product aren't also thinking about the marketing experience,
mm-hmm.
the onboarding and marketing experience,
mm-hmm.
the support and help experience,
mm-hmm.
Then we're going to create a disjointed experience for the customers, and they're going to have a very hard time.
Mm-hmm.
Merchants are going to have a hard time. We do not want our product to represent our organizational structure,
mm-hmm.
right? Oh, we have a support organization, and they run that thing. So I think of them as part of the product experience. I do. I could get technical and be like, oh, well, there's this code base that covers this part, and there's this code base that covers this part. But I think that they need to be relatively seamless. Or if there are seams, I like to say very thoughtfully seamed, right? Like not everything is seamless. Sometimes it makes sense to let you know you're going from one place to another, but it should be very thoughtful. It shouldn't be jarring. It shouldn't be accidental.
When our Leaders League was talking about your nomination and in this category of product offering, someone used the words responsive innovation. And I thought, I'd never heard it before. I thought, wow, that's a really cool phrase and it so embodies basically what you guys were doing, is that you were absorbing your customer's experience and in all aspects, and then translating that into the innovation that you were doing really across the business. I personally, I'm with you. I believe that all those things are part of the product, and that there's frankly a lot more than enough debate on whether or not the brand is the customer experience, and the customer experience is the product, and the product is the is the identity, and on all those things. I think it really boils down to, what does the customer actually think of when they think of you? And I think what comes top of mind is that, oh, this is not just simply a platform that spits out labels and stamps. This is something that actually helps me solve for a critical function in my business, and particularly to my adaptation. So
I completely agree with that.
So as you step back now and kind of, and you can't really step back yet, that's for sure, because all this is still taking shape. First, kind of answer the challenge question are the changes that have happened with small business over the course of this year so far, are they permanent? Do you believe that they really are kind of a new order in the way in which small businesses successfully operate?
I do. I actually would, my thinking there actually ties back to the phrase that you said, which is that responsive innovation idea. One thing I was going to kind of, not a correct, but I wanted to be really super transparent about us, which is we try to do two things simultaneously, which is because we see ourselves as I use the word workflow in the very general sense. Our job is to help our merchants do their work better, more efficiently, with higher quality and value and velocity. And because that's important, and because we have such a wide swath of merchants, and we have so many people early, especially that grew with COVID. I often like to say we try to know how to do this work better than our merchants, and that sounds egotistical. And I don't mean that, but if we don't have a point of view and enough knowledge to be able to do the same job that many of our merchants are doing as good or better than them, how could we possibly build a product that's supposed to help them be better? Right. And so it's not hubris. Like we learn from our merchants constantly things that we don't know, but our goal is not to just listen to them and do what they ask for. Our goal is to listen to them and to understand through the aggregation of what we've seen and through our own personal experiences, because many people in our organization have been entrepreneurs, have a point of view about where this is going, so we can help them get there by building a product for it. So what I was going to say is, what's interesting is while we responded a ton to what we've seen, mostly what we did was take things that we had already been planning to do on a roadmap that we knew were the future, we knew that we needed to do, and we just rearranged some of them or put a little more emphasis on some of them because we saw the urgency of the need for that right now. And so when I say we use the word responsive innovation, I think that's actually a great phrase, because in the sense that I think what we've been trying to do is innovate in this space, and we have a bit of a roadmap for it, but we respond to our customers' needs very, very explicitly, and we will adjust our plans around based on what's going on in their context, right? And so that's kind of where we were here, which was, I'm willing to make bets. Our company is making bets on where e-commerce and these and where the world's going. And because we were going to make bets on that, we were making longer term bets. What happened recently is merely us going, oh, you want us to we just need to shorten the timeline on those bets. Like in my mind, all this is doing is accelerating the place that most of the places we saw this going already. That sounds very trite to some degree, but we had already been committing. Like there are almost no new things on our roadmap that we did because of this experience, because of COVID. We just accelerated certain things and emphasized certain things more because we saw the immediate need of our customers. Very little new. And that's because we've already been making our bets, right? We do learn things, and so we make new things, but we've been working on this roadmap for a long time. And so, so far it's playing out that our bets seem pretty good still. This just accelerated whether or not they're going to pay off to some degree.
So do you think that kind of a parallel question to the impact on small businesses, or how permanent is the change of small business? How permanent do you think is the change that really you're talking about inside of Shipstation? Does it really create for you guys kind of a new way of doing things, or maybe an evolution of how you've done things all along?
Because of the sort of the COVID experiences, I don't know that that's changed the way that we are working internally dramatically. We've always been very responsive. We've always been trying to be very future thinking. And we've always believed that commerce was going to continue going online more and more, and that that the barrier for entry to that was going to keep going down and down and down. And so, and we built our company to work around those assumptions. So I don't know that that's changed a lot. I think that we have gotten, we focused a little bit more on the idea of someone who is really new to the e-commerce space. I think we've opened the kind of aperture on our view of those people a bit, so that we can serve them a little bit more explicitly, because there's more of them now. They used to trickle in, so to speak, and now it's actually a meaningful stream. Maybe that's a good analogy. So we're putting some more emphasis on that. That's a change for us, for sure. And then I think, this is me personally, just again, which is I've been working with Octane Shipstation for almost a year and a half. And when I came in, part of my mandate and part of my goal was to transform some things in the way our organization worked, because we were just trying to serve so many people, and some of the ways that we worked internally, our product and engineering and design organization, just needed to ramp up. It was like a minor leagues to major leagues kind of analogy kind of thing. And so I was trying to put some things in place, and if anything, this has just helped me do that, right? So if there's a change, it was a change that was already in place again. And I feel like in the last 6 months, a lot of things I was trying to push and change just got accelerated. Move more close to our users. These kinds of things we were going to do really quickly, gave us a great opportunity to just do a bunch of cleanup on the way our user experience works, so that it was easier for people who don't have deep e-commerce context. Those are things I wanted to do anyway, and that we as a team wanted to do, not just me, the whole organization did, that I was kind of trying to drive. And I think we've just doubled down on those things.
I've consistently heard that story from so many B2SMB brands that, if nothing else, COVID helped focus the mind and to, instill a sense of urgency and create alignment and create, frankly, a better clearer destination for the work that needs to get done. You know, it wasn't for the next quarter's financial statement. It wasn't for some
Yeah.
abstract metric that, or not abstract metric, some very real metric that was really more driven to revenue. But it really was more of a, no, this is now a mission. This is
Yep.
something that we really need to apply. So whether it was Lendio, who's a nominee along with you guys, or it was Shopify, or it was any of the players that really were out there that were doing such a great job of delivering product this past year. It all seemed, I hear that story over and over again of, yeah, I certainly wouldn't want to deliver the mistaken impression that it was a blessing to get COVID.
No.
But it really did create a kind of a sense of all those things that are positive to our business ultimately. So
Yeah, I think that's true. I think it's really true.
So with, as we kind of wrap up here, and not to ask you to be too presumptuous, but reflect on, as someone who has really, done so much this year in really developing and advancing your product and creating responsive innovation, what do you think, what's the advice that you would give your peers who frankly share a sense of urgency and passion to help small businesses? What are the features of great SMB product right now? What do you think is the roadmap that many of them should use for what they're taking to market?
It's a really interesting. I have so many things I think I could say, but the core. I think one of the core things I've seen in our organization that I think is really useful for other places too is getting to know your customers, which are all going to be, small businesses, getting to know the businesses of those businesses, right?
Yeah, that's not trivial, right?
Most of us have an insight. Actually, this is not purely true, but many of the companies that do well in the SMB space, in the B2SMB space, are companies that are often started by someone who was in that place before, and then they had an idea about how to solve it more generally, and then they started. Right. So that Nathan, our CEO, is very much that. He used to run a big e-commerce business, and then now he's running and so. What that gives you is, it gives you a holistic sense of what the people on the other side are trying to do. You're not just myopically focused on a particular problem amongst a lot of other ones. You need to see this as the business as a whole is what's the complete part, right? You need to know the business and support how the business is succeeding or not succeeding, right? It's not just, did we help them ship the thing the fastest or cheapest? It's how does that actually play into their larger goals of business? Because what they're actually, the only reason that matters is because they need to be able to make a promise in the checkout about how quickly it's going to go. And that promise is actually part of the way that someone converts or makes the choice to buy the thing that they were going to, So right. These things, and you need to understand how those things cascade up to what makes their business successful. And the reason I say that is because I think that is what COVID has done for those who are willing to hear it, is that, like you said, it stopped being about quarterly earnings and started being about, wow, this person has this business and they need to make rent or mortgage payments or whatever at the end of the month. And here's what we need to do to help them succeed in their business, not just in their shipping, from our example, or from in their sales from like a commerce platform. We need to understand that whole thing. And I think that has actually been the key to our success. Prior to my being here, it's very much in the DNA, but I saw it activate. I saw it really activate in the earlier part of this year. And so we could just, that activated very quickly for us. And I think it's really been good. So I encourage anybody else in this B2SMB space to really cultivate that kind of perspective, that I know that I want to, and I do understand their whole business. And my job is to make their whole business successful, even if all my product does, or my products do, is a particular part of it. Because I could have made their shipping much cheaper and more efficient just by itself. And potentially not done nearly as much to help their whole business as when we thought about the fact that all the people were coming on didn't even understand e-commerce that well, right? Like we stepped up to try to help with that. One could argue that's not really part of shipping and fulfillment, but that was what those whole businesses need in order to succeed and make that transition. And it's a very simple and probably obvious example, but like that's been super important for us. And I think that that's the core of what many organizations need to do in order to succeed. And COVID just brought it up. Like, I'm not happy COVID happened, but the urgency of COVID helps us put that really holistic view on these people who we're serving.
It's a fabulous recommendation, if not manifesto, of just look. And sometimes I think we do trivialize things with words that don't really deliver the import
Sure.
of what we're talking about. And when you talk about customer insights or those kinds of things, it just kind of gets lost in what really, even the use of the word holistic, I think probably has some baggage to it. But it really is this deep-seated, genuine desire to know and understand the small business and to understand what they really are going through, because then you will have the insight to, wait a minute, it's not shipping, it's the promise. Yeah. And it's their reputation. Now, there's nothing more important to a small business than their reputation, because they don't have a lot to give. They don't have a lot of leeway to make a mistake. They too few customers to make those kinds of mistakes. So I think it's a really, really, really great insight. And again, you nail it, man. And my hat's off to you. Congratulations again for this nomination. I think it's extremely well earned. I appreciate you coming and telling the story so that people really understand why Shipstation was nominated as a BEST2SMB product of the year.
Thank you for the nomination. It's humbling. I mean, I'm glad you can, hopefully if anything this gets across, it's the sort of the passion and commitment to getting better and better at the work that we do. That is what is behind Shipstation. I think that we have a good product and it does good things, but I think knowing who's behind it is also really helpful to know because of our dedication and how we work at it.
No, and I think that by you sharing this and our audience getting to know you, your peers getting to know you, it really does provide what I think is probably the most valuable thing that the Institute does, and that's perspective, is the perspective of someone else who is talking to the same customers, who is maybe delivering a different product, but it's kind of facing the same challenges, considering the same opportunities. How is this guy doing it over here versus this gal over here versus this team over here? And that sharing really makes everybody better, I think. So again, thanks a lot. Congrats a lot. And look forward to seeing you soon, man.
Yeah, thanks, Dave.
All righty.